Surprise! It's a touch of autumn in April, because no way was I waiting to dig into this gouache goodness. Hi, I'm Irene, and these are 12 colors from Holbein's Iridori series. This particular set is autumn. The others available are winter, spring, and summer. Sensing a theme there? Yes, they are season-related shades not found in Holbein's regular color lineup. The colors in this box include things like gardenia yellow, smoked bamboo, and pine tree green. But that's not the end of the surprises, because I said no to giving a rundown of all 12 tubes. Also, no to creating a swatch chart. Instead, there's a big yes to diving in and creating a piece right then and there. Look, Becky Tregear thoroughly covered this stuff on her channel, so if you want to see the entire Iridori series swatched out, I highly recommend you watch her videos covering it. A link is in the description. If I were better at video editing, and if I didn't care a whit about monetization, I'd have applied some creative cuts and transitions, perhaps a flashback or two, then set the result to the soundtrack from Amelie and released it as a premiere. This is just a painting of a fish in gouache, though. I don't have a lot to say about the inspiration, which was a fishing lure, or the process, which mostly speaks for itself. So what you're going to get are tenuously related thoughts and tangents. So if French accordion/piano music isn't your jam, I guess you could listen to my jabbering for snits and giggles. But first, thank you to Sarah Bailey for this delightful art book. It's stitch-bound with Arches watercolor paper. Even the end papers are handcrafted, all surrounded by a flexible cork cover with embedded shiny flecks. On the subject of tenuous connections, I recently rewatched Amelie. It's at the top of my list of comfort movies, because I adore it, yes, but also because of my fond memory of seeing it at the Grand Cinema, a lovely art house theater in Tacoma, with my older brother Al. It had been a while since my last viewing, so I'd forgotten that there's a sequence involving a pet goldfish. I grew up with sisters and brothers, so a lonely childhood is not something I'd experienced, but I could relate to losing a beloved pet. So when young Amelie watches her only friend Blubber get dumped in the river, I get a tad teary-eyed. Producer Mike and I have had a couple of fishbowl fish, but these days he's into aquarium reefing. He's on his own there, because that's way too complex for me. I can't keep a houseplant alive, let alone maintain tank water at precise salinity levels. I'm equally hopeless at fishing, which is why my fishing is limited to consoles or computers. Despite the name of the game, there was more to World of Warcraft than just smiting and frostbolting. You could spend many hours leveling professions as well, including fishing. But best of all, you could go on to cook your catch too, which was all well and good, but if it weren't for Animal Crossing, I'd have never experienced the thrill of reading a bad pun after landing an arowana. I'd repeat it here, but I don't wanna. So I spent the past week house-sitting for relatives, and yes, there were fish involved, both inside in an aquarium and outside in a koi pond. Thankfully, all I had to do was feed them. There was also a cat and a dog. When I wasn't feeding her, the cat wanted nothing to do with me, whereas the dog was as clingy as a dryer sheet. She wasn't quite inside my pants leg, but she did follow me everywhere. likely because she knew I'd been told exactly where the chicken jerky treats were kept. But that's not the end of the story. Did I mention the chickens? That's right. This suburban artist got to collect fresh eggs straight from the coop. The experience fed my urban homestead fantasies, so much so that immediately after returning home, I jumped on The Sims and designed my own little backyard farm, complete with a veggie garden, a storage barn, a beehive, and a chicken coop. There's also a hot spring and a llama because we're dreaming after all. I was going to add a soap-making shed, but I ran out of lot space. Anyone else think The Sims 4 is awfully stingy with their lots? Don't they realize that some of their players have big acreage goals? It's funny, though, because YouTube channel Royalty Soaps just uploaded a video titled Making Soap for Chicken Lovers. It's so cool because she scored the yellow surface with a fork, making it look like a bed of straw, then placed colorful egg embeds on top. It's so clever. Of course, with fish and eggs rolling through my head, my thoughts have now turned to fish eggs, basically caviar. But not the sturgeon sort, rather the salmon sort. I'm not an expert, but how I understand it is, unlike the sturgeon varieties of Sevruga, Osetra, and Beluga, salmon roe categories aren't as commonly known. As a child, the only fish eggs I was aware of were salmon eggs. That's because my mother had several friends whose husbands fished, and they sometimes shared their good fishing fortune. So I have memories of big jars full of bright orange salmon roe, intact in their membranes, sitting in the fridge next to a jug of 2% milk and a pitcher of instant iced tea. Do you remember those ubiquitous plastic Tupperware pitchers? It seemed like everyone had them in the 70s and 80s. Funnily, it was a deep orange, somewhat similar to salmon egg orange. I have a long ago vague memory of attending a Tupperware party. That wasn't my mom's thing, so I must have been dragged along by some other relative. It's all a blur of colorful containers, party favors, and raffle prizes. But the one thing that stood out was the plate of chocolate chip cookies. Even my unsophisticated child eyes could tell they weren't from a store-bought package. Yet they were perfectly dome-shaped. For years afterward, I remained mystified as to how that was accomplished. I mean, my older sisters experimented with baking, but their cookies were always flat and never uniform. In fact, they once overbaked brownies so hard that they became one with the metal baking sheet. To this day, I cannot watch John Carpenter's The Thing without going, "Oh, hey, that reminds me of those brownies." The point is, the day I discovered cookie scoopers was positively epiphanous. Epiphanic? An eye-opener. It was an eye-opener. I believe this particular lure is called a micro crankbait. It's intended for bass or trout. I borrowed it from one of producer Mike's mystery tackle boxes. If we were ever to actually homestead, we'd like to try aquaculture. That's where you raise fish in a controlled environment, and their waste feeds the plants. The water is constantly flowing, with the fish providing fertilizer and the plants filtering the water. And eventually you harvest the fish and plants. There's more to it, but that's my basic understanding. It sounds like a system that could work well for pescatarians, but in our case, we would also raise pigs. That would make us bacon-tarians? So, yeah, the fish would be only part of our omnivorous diet. Because omnivore gonna give up ham and eggs. I may have said this before, but I do like some firmness to my gouache brushes. That's why I used Princeton's brushes from their Snap and Select series. They're all synthetic haired and perform quite well. My preference is for the Snap series, but that might be because they have more heft to their handles. I guess I like that in a paintbrush. I'm in my mid 50s, so yeah, I've lost a few pets over the years. Our last was a beagle named Chloe. She was with us for, I think it was 17 years. It's been about 5 years that she's been gone, but it still feels like a punch to the gut when Google Photos does that "remember this picture from way back" thing. I'm never expecting it, and suddenly I'm sobbing and shaking my fist. You bastards! While that homesteading fantasy may look like fun, the amount of involvement required means it will remain a fantasy. 20, even 10 years ago, maybe. But these days, I'm well aware of my limitations. At this point, both producer Mike and I agree that while it would be nice to have an animal companion or two, we just aren't up to it. Our hands are full enough taking care of ourselves, so fish it is. That reminds me, long ago when I was young and stupid, I brought a frozen entree to my workplace. But it wasn't beef stroganoff or chicken a la king. Oh no. Surprise! It was fish fillet. Hey, nobody told me that cooking fish in a cramped, windowless break room was a no-no. But boy, did I learn as soon as I opened that microwave door. Not only that, but a few minutes later, I could hear the owner yelling, "Who cooked fish?" from the sales floor. Talk about cringe. No, I was not popular that week. It was a relief when, the following week, someone burnt their popcorn. It replaced the fish odor with scorched corn odor, yes, but more importantly, I was no longer the one getting the stink eye. You know, I've mentioned in the past that I enjoy the fried fish from Ivor's seafood bars and also from the Frying Scotsman in Oregon. But one I haven't brought up before is the Oxford Saloon in Snohomish. Snohomish is a city north of Seattle. It's been a while, but I recall the Oxford being a pretty cool place, with the building itself dating back to 1900. The decor includes period touches, and they claim the place is haunted. But the very best fried fish I've ever had was long ago at my sister's home. Her husband had caught a sturgeon, cleaned and prepared it, then battered and fried it. It was incredible. Firm, meaty, and delicious. I have never had better. But back to chickens. Since I'm talking about food, I recently tried Popeye's chicken sandwich, both the regular and spicy versions, and they were really good. The spicy sauce is tasty with just a bit of heat to it, but it was a tad too salty for me. So next time I'll stick with the regular. The thing is, when it comes to their fried chicken pieces, I actually prefer the spicy over the regular. I guess that's because the spice is in the seasoning rather than in a sauce. Both sandwich versions have the same fried meaty chicken with a delightfully crispy, but not too crunchy, coating. Look, I'm no chicken connoisseur, and I'll admit that Burger King's original chicken sandwich is one of my guilty pleasures. But something as good as Popeye's chicken sandwich is a no-brainer for me. I'm happy to share these experiences. I know it was a lot of fish this and chicken that, so thanks for hanging in there until the end. Because, well, I don't have a pet to talk to, at least not one that will respond with more than a flap of its fin. Until next time, watch out for surprises. You never know when someone's gonna spring an autumnal palette on you, then refuse to even swatch the dang thing. And for gouache's sake, stay artsy, my friends.